In the distant future, humanity had spread across the stars, colonizing countless planets and moons. But this expansion came at a cost. The vast distances between worlds bred division, and soon rival factions emerged, each vying for control of resources and territory. Among these factions was an alliance led by Commander William Carter, a man known for his calm demeanor but fierce determination. For years he had fought to protect his people from the relentless aggression of the Zainari Empire, a ruthless regime that sought to dominate all human settlements. The war had taken its toll. Despite their best efforts, William's forces were outmatched. The Zainari possessed superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Every battle seemed to bring them closer to defeat, and morale among the troops was at an all-time low. Desperation hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud refusing to break. It was during one of these bleak moments that a glimmer of hope appeared, not in the form of a weapon or strategy, but as a story whispered among soldiers huddled around flickering campfires. The tale spoke of an ancient warship called the Eclipse. According to legend, it was built by a long-lost civilization, a marvel of engineering so advanced that it could turn the tide of any conflict. Its hull was said to be indestructible, its weapons unmatched, and its speed unparalleled. Many dismissed the story as nothing more than a fairy tale, a myth spun to inspire courage in times of despair. Yet there were those who clung to the belief that the eclipse might be real, hidden somewhere in the vast expanse of space, waiting to be rediscovered. One such believer was Rachel Dawson, a young intelligence officer stationed aboard one of the Alliance's command ships. Rachel had always been curious, her mind sharp and analytical. While others shrugged off the stories about the eclipse, she couldn't shake the feeling that there might be some truth to them. Late at night, when the rest of the crew slept, she pored over old records and intercepted transmissions, searching for any clue that might lead her to the fabled warship. Her persistence paid off one evening when she stumbled upon something unusual. Buried deep within a string of encrypted messages was a set of coordinates unlike anything she'd seen before. They pointed to a remote star system far beyond the reach of human exploration. At first glance, they seemed random, meaningless even, but Rachel noticed patterns, mathematical sequences that hinted at deliberate design. Her heart raced as she realized what she might have found. Rachel wasted no time bringing her discovery to Commander William Carter. She approached him cautiously, knowing how skeptical he was of anything resembling speculation. "Sir," she began, standing straight and trying to mask her excitement, "I think I've found something." William looked up from the tactical map he'd been studying. His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing her expression. "Something?" he asked, his tone neutral. "It's about the eclipse," Rachel said quickly, then paused, bracing herself for dismissal. When none came, she continued, "I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. These coordinates, they match descriptions from old legends. And the math behind them, it's too precise to be coincidence." To her surprise, William didn't laugh or dismiss her outright. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples thoughtfully. He knew their situation was dire. Without reinforcements or a breakthrough, their resistance would crumble under the Zainari onslaught. If even a fraction of the stories about the eclipse were true, it could mean salvation for their people. "All right," William said finally, his voice firm. "We'll investigate, but we need a small team, no unnecessary risks." Over the next few days, preparations were made. William handpicked a group of trusted individuals to join the mission. First was Daniel Reeves, a skilled pilot with nerves of steel. Though cocky at times, Daniel's abilities were unmatched, and he had proven himself in countless skirmishes. Next was Samantha Brooks, an engineer whose knack for fixing things bordered on miraculous. Her expertise would be crucial if they hoped to understand and possibly operate any alien technology they encountered. As the team gathered aboard their aging scout ship, tensions ran high. Daniel voiced his doubts openly, leaning casually against a bulkhead while chewing on a piece of gum. "You really think chasing fairy tales is going to save us?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sounds like a waste of time to me." Samantha shot him a glare. "If you've got a better idea, I'm all ears," she retorted, tightening a bolt on her toolkit. Otherwise, maybe focus on flying us in one piece instead of complaining. Rachel stepped in before the argument escalated. This isn't just some wild goose chase, she said firmly. There's evidence backing this up, real evidence. We owe it to everyone counting on us to at least try. William nodded in agreement. She's right. This could be our only chance. Let's move out. The journey to the coordinates was fraught with challenges. The route took them through treacherous regions of space littered with debris fields, radiation zones, and abandoned outposts left behind by forgotten colonies. At times it felt like the universe itself was conspiring against them. Equipment malfunctioned, fuel reserves dwindled faster than expected, and tempers flared as fatigue set in. Despite the difficulties, the team pressed on. Rachel spent hours cross-referencing data, ensuring they stayed on course. Samantha worked tirelessly to keep their ship running, often staying up late into the night tinkering with engines and repairing damaged systems. Even Daniel, for all his skepticism, proved invaluable, navigating them through asteroid belts and nebulae with expert precision. As they neared the final set of coordinates, strange phenomena began to occur. Their instruments started picking up anomalies, fluctuations in gravity, bursts of electromagnetic energy, and faint whispers over communication channels that sounded almost like voices. The strangest of all was a swirling vortex of light that appeared ahead of them, pulsating with an eerie blue glow. "What the hell is that?" Daniel muttered, adjusting the ship's trajectory to get a better look. "No idea," William replied, his gaze fixed on the phenomenon. But we're not turning back now. Rachel felt a mix of fear and exhilaration as they approached the vortex. Could this be it? Was this the gateway to the eclipse? Or was it something else entirely? A trap, perhaps, or a natural hazard they hadn't anticipated? "We go through," William decided after a moment's hesitation. Full shields, minimal, thrust, stay alert. With bated breath, the team guided their ship into the vortex. The world around them dissolved into a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations, disorienting yet strangely beautiful. For a brief moment, it felt as though they were being pulled apart and reassembled at the same time. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sensation stopped. When they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in a star system unlike any they'd ever seen. Floating ruins drifted lazily through space, their surfaces etched with intricate designs that hinted at an advanced civilization. In the distance loomed a massive planet shrouded in mist, its atmosphere glowing faintly in shades of gold and silver. And there, suspended above the planet, was a sleek black shape that took their breath away. "It's real," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Before them lay the eclipse, its dark hull gleaming faintly under the light of a nearby star. It was larger than any ship they'd ever encountered, its design both elegant and intimidating. Sensors detected no signs of life, but the vessel radiated an aura of power that sent chills down their spines. For a moment, no one spoke. The enormity of what they were seeing sank in slowly, like waves lapping at the shore. This wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a promise of hope, a chance to fight back against the Zenari and reclaim their future. "Well," Daniel said eventually, breaking the silence with forced nonchalance, "guess we'd better go knock on the door, huh?" William smiled, faintly a spark of determination reigniting in his eyes. "Let's do it." And with that, the team prepared to board the Eclipse, unaware of the trials and revelations that awaited them inside. The crew approached the Eclipse with a mix of awe and unease. The warship loomed before them, its sleek black hull reflecting faint glimmers of starlight. It looked untouched by time, as if it had been waiting patiently for someone to find it. Despite its imposing presence, there was an eerie stillness about the vessel, like a predator lying in wait. Daniel piloted their scout ship closer, his hands steady on the controls but his jaw clenched tightly. "This thing gives me the creeps," he muttered under his breath. Samantha glanced at him from her seat, rolling her eyes. "You're just scared because it's bigger than your ego," she teased, trying to lighten the mood. But even she couldn't deny the tension in the air. Rachel sat quietly, studying the readings on her tablet. Her mind raced with questions. How old was this ship? Who built it? And most importantly, could they actually use it? She pushed those thoughts aside for now, focusing instead on the task at hand. They needed to board the Eclipse and figure out how to bring it online, if that was even possible. William gave the order to dock. Their small ship connected to one of the airlocks on the Eclipse's surface. As the hiss of equalizing pressure filled the cabin, the team suited up in protective gear, unsure of what they might encounter inside. Armed with flashlights and tools, they stepped cautiously into the unknown. The interior of the Eclipse was unlike anything they'd ever seen. The walls were smooth and metallic, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. Strange symbols glowed softly along the corridors, pulsating rhythmically as if alive. The air smelled sterile, almost clinical, yet carried an undertone of something ancient, like dust settling over centuries. "This place feels wrong," Daniel whispered, sweeping his flashlight beam across the hallway. His voice echoed slightly, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. "It's just empty," Samantha replied, though her own grip on her toolkit tightened. "Let's focus on finding the control room or whatever passes for it." Rachel nodded, consulting her tablet again. "These glowing symbols, they might be part of the navigation system. If we can decode them, we might be able to activate the ship." As they moved deeper into the vessel, the silence grew heavier. Every step echoed loudly, making them hyper-aware of their surroundings. At one point, Samantha thought she heard a faint hum like machinery powering up, but when she stopped to listen, it vanished. "Did you hear that?" she asked, looking around nervously. "Probably just your imagination," Daniel said, though he glanced over his shoulder anyway. They eventually reached a large chamber that resembled a command center. In the middle of the room stood a circular platform surrounded by holographic interfaces that flickered weakly. The symbols here were brighter, almost inviting, and Rachel immediately went to work deciphering them. Samantha joined her, examining the physical components of the console while William and Daniel kept watch. After several tense minutes, Rachel let out a triumphant gasp. "I think I've got it," she exclaimed, tapping a sequence of symbols on the interface. The response was instantaneous. The entire ship shuddered as systems began waking up, lights flooding the chamber and illuminating previously darkened areas. Panels lit up, screens displayed streams of data, and a low hum resonated through the floor. "It's alive," Samantha breathed, her eyes wide with wonder, but their excitement was short-lived. Moments later, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed, and a robotic voice echoed in a language none of them understood. Panic surged through the group as the ship's defenses activated, sealing off exits and locking them inside the chamber. "What did you do?" Daniel shouted, backing away from the console. "I didn't mean to," Rachel stammered, frantically working to reverse whatever had triggered the alarm. "It must have detected us as intruders." William stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay calm. We need to figure this out before he could finish." The ship's vibrations intensified. A hologram materialized above the central platform, depicting a humanoid figure cloaked in flowing robes. Its face was obscured, but its voice was calm and measured, speaking in perfect English. "Unauthorized access detected. State your purpose." The crew froze, staring at the hologram in stunned silence. Finally, William spoke up. "We are humans," he said carefully. "We seek refuge and aid against our enemies. This ship, you call it the Eclipse, is said to hold great power. We mean no harm." The hologram paused, as if processing his words. Then it responded, "Identity verified. Humanity recognized. Access granted." With that, the alarms ceased and the red lights dimmed. The doors reopened, allowing them to leave the chamber. Samantha exhaled sharply, clutching her chest. That was too close. Rachel frowned, still studying the hologram. "How does it know us? Why did it recognize humanity?" "I don't care why. Daniel cut in, shaking his head. I just want to know how to fly this thing before someone shows up asking questions. William turned to the group, his expression serious. We don't have much time. Activating this ship likely sent out signals. The Zenari could already be on their way. He was right. While the crew explored further, sensors aboard the Eclipse detected incoming ships. The Zenari Empire, alerted by the sudden surge of energy from the hidden star system, had dispatched a fleet to investigate. Their arrival would not be far behind. Samantha worked tirelessly to understand the ship's systems, poring over diagrams and manuals projected by the holographic interfaces. She discovered that the Eclipse was equipped with advanced weaponry, including plasma cannons capable of obliterating entire fleets. Its energy shields were nearly impenetrable, designed to withstand even the most powerful attacks. However, operating these systems required knowledge they didn't yet possess. We'll have to learn as we go, Samantha admitted, frustration creeping into her voice. Some of this tech is beyond anything I've ever seen. Meanwhile, Rachel focused on decoding more of the ship's archives. She uncovered fragments of information about its creators, a race called the Calith, who had once ruled vast portions of the galaxy. According to the records, the Calith had built the Eclipse as a last resort, a weapon meant to preserve peace after centuries of conflict. But something had gone wrong. Their civilization had collapsed, leaving the Eclipse abandoned, until now. As the hours passed, the crew grew increasingly anxious. Daniel practiced flying the ship in simulated environments, struggling to adapt to its highly responsive controls. William coordinated their efforts, ensuring everyone stayed focused despite the looming threat. Rachel continued digging through the archives, hoping to find anything that could give them an edge. Finally, the inevitable happened. Sensors indicated that the Zenari fleet had entered the star system, heading straight for the Eclipse. There was no time left to prepare. The crew gathered in the command center, their faces grim but resolute. We knew this day would come, William said, addressing the group. We may not be ready, but we have no choice. If we run, they'll follow. If we fight, we stand a chance, not just for ourselves, but for everyone counting on us. Daniel cracked his knuckles, determination, replacing his earlier skepticism. All right, let's show these guys what this fairy tale ship can do. Samantha double-checked the weapon systems, her fingers flying over the controls. Shields are up, weapons armed, just say the word. Rachel stood beside her, clutching a tablet filled with notes. If we survive this, we'll have answers. For now, let's make sure we live long enough to find them. William nodded, taking his position at the helm. Outside the viewport, the Zenari ships drew closer, their menacing silhouettes blotting out the stars. He gripped the controls tightly, his voice steady. Prepare for combat. The Eclipse roared to life, its engines flaring as it turned to face the enemy. For the first time in centuries, the legendary warship was ready to fulfill its purpose. And as the battle lines were drawn, the crew braced themselves for the fight of their lives. The Zenari fleet loomed in the distance, their ships dark and menacing against the starry backdrop. Their arrival was like a storm cloud rolling over a calm sea, bringing with it an oppressive weight of dread. On board the Eclipse, the crew worked frantically to prepare for the impending battle. Despite the ship's advanced technology, none of them had ever operated anything like it before. Every second counted as they tried to familiarize themselves with its systems. William stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls tightly. The holographic displays around him flickered with streams of data, showing the positions of the enemy ships. They're spreading out, he said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. Looks like they're trying to surround us. Samantha glanced up from her station, where she was monitoring the energy shields. Shields are holding at full capacity, she reported, but I don't know how long they'll last if we take too many hits. This is all theoretical. We've never tested them in combat. Rachel hovered nearby, clutching her tablet filled with notes on the ship's systems. I've been reviewing the weapon specs, she said quickly. The plasma cannons have a wide range, but they need time to recharge after each shot. We'll have to be careful about when we use them. Daniel sat at the navigation console, his fingers dancing over the controls as he adjusted the ship's trajectory. Got it, he replied without looking up. Let me guess. This thing handles like a dream, right? Despite the gravity of the situation, Samantha managed a small smile. Just don't crash us into anything, that'd be embarrassing. The tension in the room eased slightly, but only for a moment. Outside the viewport, the first wave of Zenari ships began firing. Bright streaks of light shot toward the eclipse, illuminating the darkness of space. The crew braced themselves, waiting for the impact, but it never came. Instead, the energy shields absorbed the blasts effortlessly, rippling faintly under the strain but holding firm. A collective sigh of relief passed through the group, though no one dared to celebrate just yet. They're testing us, William said, narrowing his eyes. They think this is just another human ship. Well, let's show them otherwise, Daniel muttered, his tone sharp with determination. William nodded. Fire the plasma cannons, target their lead cruiser. Samantha hesitated for a split second before pressing the activation sequence. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening roar, twin beams of searing plasma erupted from the eclipse's forward turrets, slicing through space like blades. They struck the lead Zenari ship dead center, piercing its hull and engulfing it in a blinding explosion. The crew stared in stunned silence as debris scattered across the void. Even William, who had expected the eclipse to perform well, couldn't hide his astonishment. Did we just... He started, trailing off. We did, Rachel confirmed, her voice trembling with awe. That was incredible. But there was no time to marvel at their success. The remaining Zenari ships regrouped, their movements more aggressive now. Clearly, they hadn't anticipated such devastating firepower from their opponents. Lasers and missiles rained down on the eclipse, battering its shields relentlessly. Alarms blared as the shield levels fluctuated dangerously low. Shields at 50%, Samantha shouted, her fingers flying over the controls. I'm rerouting auxiliary power, but it won't hold forever. Keep them busy, William ordered, his mind racing. He turned to Daniel. Can you maneuver us behind their formation? If we can hit them from the rear, we might break their line. On it, Daniel replied, his focus absolute. With practiced precision, he guided the eclipse into a sweeping arc, dodging incoming fire while positioning the ship for a counterattack. The sleek warship moved with surprising agility, its engines emitting bursts of blue flame as it accelerated. Rachel leaned closer to the holographic interface, studying the layout of the enemy fleet. There's a gap in their defenses, she announced. If we target that spot, we can split them apart. Do it, William commanded. Samantha, ready the cannons. As the eclipse lined up its shot, the Zenari ships launched a coordinated assault, unleashing a barrage of torpedoes. The explosions rocked the ship violently, throwing the crew off balance. Lights flickered and warning alerts flashed across every screen. We're taking damage, Samantha yelled, her voice rising in panic. One of the plasma cannons is offline. Stay focused, William barked, his tone cutting through the chaos. We've got one shot at this. Make it count. With a deep breath, Samantha activated the remaining cannon. Another beam of plasma surged forward, striking the weak point in the Zenari formation. The resulting explosion tore through multiple ships, sending shockwaves rippling through the fleet. Panic spread among the enemy ranks, as their carefully orchestrated attack crumbled into disarray. For a brief moment, it seemed like victory was within reach. But the reprieve was short-lived. As the crew celebrated their successful maneuver, a new threat emerged. A massive Zenari dreadnought appeared on the horizon, dwarfing the other ships in the fleet. Its surface bristled with weapons, and its sheer size made the eclipse look almost insignificant by comparison. Oh no, Rachel whispered, her face pale. That wasn't part of the intel. They must have brought it as backup, William growled, his jaw tightening. Everyone, brace yourselves. This isn't over yet. The dreadnought opened fire immediately, unleashing a devastating salvo of heavy artillery. The impact shook the eclipse violently, causing sparks to erupt from several consoles. Warning alarms screamed throughout the ship as critical systems began to fail. Shields are down to 20%. Samantha cried, her hands moving furiously to stabilize the situation. If they hit us again, we're done for. Daniel clenched his teeth, sweat dripping from his brow as he struggled to keep the ship steady. "I can't dodge everything," he snapped. "We need a miracle." Rachel scanned the holographic displays desperately, searching for any advantage they might exploit. Her eyes landed on a blinking icon near the edge of the screen, a module labeled Emergency Override. She didn't know what it did, but it was their only option. "Commander," she called out, pointing to the icon. "What about this? It says Override Protocol. Maybe it can boost our defenses or something." William hesitated, weighing the risks. Activating an unknown system during combat was dangerous, but they were running out of options. "Do it," he said finally. "Whatever happens, we'll deal with it." Rachel tapped the icon, initiating the override. Instantly, the ship's core systems surged with energy. The hum of the engines grew louder, and the shields flared back to life, glowing brighter than before. New weapons appeared online, including a massive energy cannon mounted on the underside of the ship. "What the hell is that?" Daniel asked, staring at the display in disbelief. "Doesn't matter," William replied, his voice firm. "Aim it at the dreadnought. Fire everything we've got." Samantha complied without hesitation, channeling all available power into the cannon. A massive beam of concentrated energy erupted from the eclipse, striking the dreadnought with catastrophic force. The enemy ship shuddered violently, its armor cracking under the immense pressure. Seconds later, it exploded in a brilliant flash of light, scattering debris across the battlefield. The remaining Zenari forces, demoralized and leaderless, began retreating. One by one, their ships disengaged, fleeing into the depths of space. By the time the last enemy vessel disappeared from view, the crew of the Eclipse was left in stunned silence. "That actually worked," Daniel said slowly, breaking the quiet. "We won." "For now," William corrected, his expression grim. "But they'll be back, and next time, they'll come prepared." Rachel nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "We barely survived this fight. If we want to stand a chance against them in the future, we need to learn how to use this ship properly." Samantha sighed, slumping into her seat. "Easier said than done. Half the systems are fried, and I don't even know where to start fixing them." Despite the challenges ahead, a sense of hope lingered in the air. For the first time since the war began, the crew felt like they had a real chance, not just to survive, but to fight back. The Eclipse had proven itself worthy of its legend, but the journey was far from over. They had only scratched the surface of its capabilities, and the mystery surrounding its creators remained unsolved. As the adrenaline faded and reality set in, the crew knew they couldn't afford to rest. The Zenari Empire wouldn't give up easily, and the secrets of the Eclipse held answers that could change the course of the war, and perhaps the fate of humanity itself. William looked around at his team, pride swelling in his chest. "Good work, everyone. But remember, this is just the beginning. We've got a lot more to do if we're going to win this fight." And with those words, the crew turned their attention to repairing the ship and preparing for whatever lay ahead. The legend of the Eclipse had become their reality, and they were determined to make the most of it. After the battle, the crew of the Eclipse took a moment to catch their breath. The ship's interior was dimly lit, with sparks still flying from damaged panels and warning lights flashing sporadically. Despite the chaos, a sense of relief washed over them. They had survived their first encounter with the Zenari Empire, and not only survived but emerged victorious. However, the victory felt hollow. The cost of the fight was evident in the wear and tear on the ship, and the looming threat of retaliation weighed heavily on their minds. Samantha worked tirelessly at her station trying to assess the damage. Her fingers moved quickly over the holographic interface, scanning diagnostics and rerouting power to critical systems. "Engines are holding steady," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "But the plasma cannons are fried. We'll need time to fix them, time we don't have." Rachel stood nearby, clutching her tablet as she reviewed the logs from the battle. "We pushed this ship way beyond its limits," she said quietly. "It's amazing it didn't fall apart completely." William paced the command center, his brow furrowed in thought. He knew they couldn't afford to rest for long. The Zainari would regroup, analyze their defeat, and return stronger. And while the eclipse had proven itself capable of turning the tide, it wasn't invincible. Every system failure, every malfunction, reminded him how fragile their situation truly was. "We need to understand this ship better," William said finally, stopping in front of the group. "Not just how to use it, but why it was built. If we're going to rely on it, we need answers." Daniel leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms above his head. "Answers sound great, boss, but where do we start? This thing's like a puzzle box designed by aliens who think differently than us." Rachel nodded in agreement. "He's right. Everything about this ship is advanced. Almost too advanced. It's like trying to learn calculus when you've barely mastered addition." Despite the challenges, Rachel refused to give up. She had always been driven by curiosity, and now that same drive pushed her to dig deeper into the eclipse's secrets. Returning to the archives she'd uncovered earlier, she began piecing together fragments of information about the Caliph, the ancient civilization that had created the warship. The records were fragmented, written in a language that required constant translation. But slowly, details began to emerge. According to the archives, the Caliph had once ruled vast portions of the galaxy, their influence stretching across countless star systems. They were a peaceful people initially, dedicating themselves to exploration and knowledge. But as their empire grew, so did their conflicts. Wars erupted over resources, territory, and ideology, fracturing the once unified society. In response, the Caliph developed the Eclipse as a last resort, a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its purpose wasn't merely to destroy but to preserve peace through overwhelming force. However, something went wrong. The exact nature of the catastrophe remained unclear, but the Caliph vanished soon after completing the ship, leaving behind only cryptic messages and ruins scattered throughout space. Rachel shared her findings with the team, projecting images of the Caliph's symbols and texts onto the central platform. "They knew humanity would rise eventually," she explained. "These messages, they left clues for us, like they wanted us to find the eclipse when we needed it most." William frowned, studying the projections. If they foresaw our arrival, why leave it hidden for so long? Why not make it easier to access? "Maybe they didn't trust us," Daniel suggested, shrugging. "Or maybe they figured we'd screw it up if we found it too soon." Samantha rolled her eyes. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." As the discussion continued, Samantha noticed something unusual in the diagnostic reports. Certain systems within the eclipse were still active despite the damage sustained during the battle. These systems weren't tied to weapons or shields, but seemed to serve another purpose entirely. Intrigued, she followed the data trail, leading her to a secluded chamber deep within the ship. When she arrived, she found a circular room bathed in soft golden light. At its center stood a pedestal adorned with glowing runes. Above it hovered a hologram, an image of the Caliph leader, the same cloaked figure that had greeted them earlier. Unlike before, this version spoke directly to her, its voice calm, yet commanding. "You have awakened the eclipse," it said. "Its power is yours to wield, but beware. Such strength comes with consequences. Humanity must prove itself worthy, lest history repeat." Samantha froze, unsure how to respond. Before she could say anything, the hologram faded, leaving her alone in the chamber. Shaken, she returned to the command center to share what she'd seen. "They're testing us," she told the group, her voice tinged with unease. "The Caliph, they didn't just hand this ship over blindly. They're watching, waiting to see what we do with it." William nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "Then we'd better be careful. Using the eclipse isn't just about winning battles. It's about proving we can handle the responsibility." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. Sensors detected movement in the nearby star system, Zanari scout ships probing the area. Though small in number, their presence indicated that the Empire hadn't abandoned its pursuit. Reinforcements were likely en route and the crew needed a plan. "We can't stay here," William declared. "This system's too exposed. We need somewhere safe to repair the ship and prepare for the next fight." Rachel suggested heading to a nearby nebula she'd identified during their journey. Its dense gas clouds would provide cover, making it harder for the Zanari to track them. Daniel agreed, adding that the nebula's natural radiation could mask their energy signature. With the decision made, Daniel guided the Eclipse toward the nebula, navigating carefully to avoid collisions with floating debris. As they entered, the swirling mass of colors, the ship's sensors struggled to penetrate the thick haze. Visibility dropped drastically, forcing the crew to rely on instinct and teamwork. Once safely concealed, Samantha got to work repairing the damaged systems. She enlisted Rachel's help, deciphering technical manuals stored in the archives, which provided invaluable insights into the ship's inner workings. Together, they managed to stabilize the engines and restore partial functionality to the plasma cannons. Meanwhile, William and Daniel scouted the surrounding area, using drones to map out potential escape routes in case the Zanari discovered their location. The tension was palpable. Everyone knew they were living on borrowed time. Days passed in a blur of activity. The crew rotated shifts, ensuring someone was always monitoring the ship's status or keeping watch for enemy activity. Despite the strain, a sense of camaraderie began to form. They were no longer just individuals thrown together by circumstance. They were a team, united by a shared goal. One evening, as the others rested, William found himself reflecting on their journey so far. He stood alone in the observation deck, gazing out at the kaleidoscope of colors swirling outside. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope, not just for survival, but for a future where humanity could stand tall against oppression. "We've come a long way," a voice said softly behind him. Turning, he saw Rachel approaching, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think we can really pull this off?" William hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I don't know. But I do know one thing, we're not giving up. Not now, not ever." Rachel nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Then let's keep fighting. For everyone counting on us." As they returned to the command center, the crew gathered around the central platform, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Eclipse may have been a relic of the past, but under their care, it had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. And though the road ahead was uncertain, they were prepared to meet it head-on. The legend of the Eclipse was far from over, and neither was their story. The nebula provided a temporary haven, but the crew of the Eclipse knew it wouldn't last forever. The Zainari Empire was relentless, and their scouts were bound to find them eventually. Every day they spent repairing the ship brought them closer to being ready for the next battle. But it also gave the enemy more time to prepare. Samantha worked tirelessly in the engineering bay, her hands covered in grease as she pieced together damaged components. She had become obsessed with understanding every inch of the Eclipse, poring over the Calith's technical manuals and experimenting with its systems. Though progress was slow, she managed to restore most of the plasma cannons and stabilize the energy shields. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, some hidden feature or failsafe buried deep within the ship's design. Rachel, meanwhile, continued her research into the Calith. She spent hours deciphering their language, piecing together fragments of their history and philosophy. What she found troubled her. The Calith hadn't just built the Eclipse as a weapon. They'd imbued it with safeguards meant to prevent its misuse. One passage stood out in particular. "Power unchecked breeds destruction. Those who wield it must prove themselves worthy, or face annihilation." They didn't trust anyone blindly, Rachel explained during one of their nightly meetings. They left clues, tests to ensure the ship wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. "I think we're still being evaluated." William frowned, his mind racing. "Evaluated how? By who? The Calith are gone." "Maybe not entirely," Rachel replied. "Their technology is advanced enough to leave behind automated systems, or even artificial intelligence. That hologram Samantha saw could be part of it." Daniel scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Great! So now we've got ghost aliens grading us on our performance? Perfect." "It's not funny," Samantha snapped, glaring at him. "If we mess up, this ship might turn on us, or worse, lock us out completely." William raised a hand to silence the argument before it escalated. Enough. We don't have time for speculation. Whether we're being tested or not, we need to focus on staying alive. Let's assume the worst and plan accordingly. As if on cue, the ship's sensors picked up faint signals emanating from outside the nebula. At first, they seemed harmless. Just stray energy readings bouncing off nearby gas clouds. But as the hours passed, the signals grew stronger and more organized. It wasn't long before the crew realized what they were dealing with. Xenari reconnaissance drones, probing the edges of the nebula in search of their quarry. "They know we're here," Daniel muttered, tapping furiously at his console. "It's only a matter of time before they send in the fleet. We can't outrun them," William said grimly. "Not in our current state. We'll have to make a stand." The decision weighed heavily on everyone, but there was no other choice. Leaving. The nebula prematurely would expose them to attack, while staying put risked being cornered. They needed a strategy, one that played to the Eclipse's strengths while minimizing its vulnerabilities. Rachel suggested using the environment to their advantage. "The nebula's dense clouds can block sensors and disrupt communications," she explained. "If we lure the Xenari in, we can ambush them before they realize what's happening." Samantha nodded thoughtfully. "We could also use the ship's cloaking system. It's still functional, though it drains a lot of power. If we time it right, we can disappear and strike without warning." William considered their suggestions, then turned to Daniel. "Can you navigate through the nebula's thickest regions without crashing us?" Daniel smirked, cracking his knuckles. "Piece of cake. Just try not to distract me with your inspirational speeches." With the plan set, the crew prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Samantha rerouted additional power to the cloaking system, ensuring it would hold long enough for their trap to work. Rachel fine-tuned the targeting systems, optimizing the plasma cannons for maximum efficiency. Meanwhile, William coordinated their movements, keeping a close eye on the approaching Xenari forces. When the enemy ships finally entered the nebula, the crew sprang into action. Activating the cloaking device, the Eclipse vanished from sight, slipping silently through the swirling clouds. The Xenari fleet moved cautiously, their sensors struggling to penetrate the haze. Confusion rippled through their ranks as they searched for signs of their elusive target. "They're blind," Daniel whispered, a grin spreading across his face. "Let's hit 'em where it hurts." William gave the order, and Samantha fired. The plasma cannons. Twin beams of searing energy erupted from the Eclipse, striking two Xenari cruisers simultaneously. The explosions lit up the nebula, sending shockwaves rippling through the gas clouds. Chaos erupted among the enemy fleet as they scrambled to locate the source of the attack. For a brief moment, the crew felt invincible. Their ambush had worked perfectly, catching the Xenari off guard and inflicting heavy damage. But their success was short-lived. As the remaining ships regrouped, a new threat emerged. A massive carrier vessel bristling with weapons and escorted by smaller fighters. Unlike the previous dreadnought, this ship was equipped with advanced sensor arrays capable of cutting through the nebula's interference. "They've upgraded," Rachel said, her voice tense. "That thing's designed to counter stealth tactics." William clenched his jaw, his mind racing for solutions. "We can't take it head-on, not yet," Samantha chimed in, her tone urgent. "The cloaking system's already overheating. If we keep using it, we'll fry the circuits." Daniel leaned forward, studying the tactical display. "There's a narrow corridor between those gas clouds up ahead. If we can lure them in there, we might be able to collapse the walls and trap them." "It's risky," William admitted, "but it's our best shot." The plan was simple yet dangerous. Using bursts of speed and precision maneuvers, Daniel guided the Eclipse deeper into the nebula, drawing the Xenari fleet in pursuit. The carrier ship followed closely, its escorts fanning out to flank their prey. Sparks flew from consoles as the strain on the ship's systems mounted, but the crew held firm, trusting in each other's skills. When they reached the designated corridor, William gave the order. Samantha activated the ship's gravity manipulators, a feature she had only recently discovered, and triggered a controlled destabilization of the surrounding gas clouds. Massive chunks of debris broke free, tumbling toward the pursuing Xenari ships. Caught off guard, several cruisers collided with the falling rocks, exploding in fiery bursts. The carrier ship narrowly avoided the worst of the carnage, but its escorts weren't so lucky. With their formation shattered, the surviving vessels retreated, leaving the behemoth exposed. Sensing their opportunity, the crew of the Eclipse launched a final assault. "All weapons online," Samantha reported, her voice steady despite the tension. "Ready to fire." "Do it," William commanded. A barrage of plasma blasts tore through the carrier's weakened defenses, piercing its hull and igniting internal explosions. Within moments, the once mighty ship crumbled into a fiery wreck, its remains drifting aimlessly through the nebula. The crew let out a collective sigh of relief as the last of the Zenari forces fled the area. For the second time, they had triumphed against overwhelming odds, but the victory came at a cost. The Eclipse's systems were pushed to their limits, and critical components were on the verge of failure. Exhaustion hung heavy in the air, and the weight of their responsibilities pressed down on them. As they limped back to the relative safety of the nebula's core, William gathered the team in the command center. "Good work," he said, his voice tinged with both pride and concern. "But we can't keep doing this. Every battle takes a toll, not just on the ship, but on us. We need reinforcements, allies, something to tip the scales in our favor." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "What about the colonies? Some of them have been resisting the Zenari for years. If we reach out, maybe they'll join us." "It's worth a shot," Daniel agreed. "But getting there won't be easy. We're sitting ducks until we fix this heap." William glanced around at his crew, seeing the determination in their eyes despite their fatigue. "Then let's get to work. We've survived this long because we've stuck together. No matter what happens next, we'll face it as a team." Over the following days, the crew threw themselves into repairs, working around the clock to restore the Eclipse to full functionality. Samantha tinkered with the engines, coaxing extra performance from the battered machinery. Rachel delved deeper into the archives, uncovering new insights into the ship's capabilities. Daniel practiced evasive maneuvers in simulated environments, honing his piloting skills. And William kept watch, ensuring they remained vigilant against any further threats. Through it all, the bond between them grew stronger. They had started as strangers, united by necessity, but now they were family, bound by shared experiences and a common purpose. Each of them carried scars, both visible and invisible, but none of them faltered. They had seen the power of the Eclipse, and they understood the responsibility that came with wielding it. As the ship's systems hummed back to life, the crew prepared for the next phase of their mission. The nebula had given them shelter, but it was time to leave its protective embrace and venture into the unknown. Ahead lay challenges greater than any they had faced before, but also opportunities to inspire others, to rally humanity against the Zenari Empire, and to reclaim their future. The repairs were complete, and the Eclipse hummed with renewed energy. The crew had worked tirelessly to restore the ship's systems, patching up its wounds from the battles in the nebula. Though the scars of combat lingered, charred panels, flickering lights, and scorch marks on the hull, the warship was ready to fight again. But this time the stakes were higher. They weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were preparing to strike back at the heart of the Zenari Empire. William stood in the command center, staring at the tactical map projected above the central platform. It showed the location of key Zenari strongholds, including their homeworld, a heavily fortified planet surrounded by layers of defenses. Attacking it directly would be suicide, but William knew they couldn't win the war by playing defense forever. If they wanted to end the conflict, they had to take the fight to the enemy. "We can't do this alone," Rachel said, breaking the silence. She had been analyzing intelligence reports, mapping out potential allies among the human colonies, scattered across the galaxy. "The Zenari are too strong. We need help." William nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're right. But convincing others to join us won't be easy. Most of the colonies are either under Zenari control or too scared to fight back." "Then we show them what we've got," Daniel interjected, leaning against a console. One good demonstration of the eclipse's power, and they'll line up to join our cause. It's not that simple, Samantha countered, her voice firm. People don't just follow strength, they follow hope. We need to give them something to believe in. Rachel stepped forward, holding up her tablet. I've identified a few colonies that have resisted the Xenari for years. They're small, isolated, and struggling, but they're still fighting. If we reach out to them, offer protection and resources, they might trust us enough to join. Forces. William considered her words, then made his decision. All right. Let's start with the closest one. If we can rally even a handful of allies, it'll make a difference. With their course set, Daniel piloted the Eclipse out of the nebula and into open space. The journey was tense, as the crew constantly monitored for signs of Xenari activity. They knew their recent victories wouldn't go unanswered, and it was only a matter of time before the Empire retaliated in full force. But for now, the path ahead was clear. When they arrived at the first colony, a modest settlement orbiting a barren moon, the sight was sobering. The inhabitants lived in makeshift habitats, their ships battered and outdated. Years of oppression had left them wary and distrustful, and when the eclipse appeared in their skies, panic spread quickly. Some feared it was another Xenari attack, while others dismissed it as a mirage, too incredible to be real. William sent a message over an open channel addressing the colonists calmly. This is Commander William Carter of the Eclipse. We're here to help. The Xenari don't own the stars, and neither do we. Together we can take back what's ours. At first, there was silence. Then, cautiously, a response came through. A woman named Claire, one of the colony's leaders, agreed to meet aboard the Eclipse. When she arrived, escorted by Daniel and Samantha, her eyes widened in awe as she took in the ship's advanced design and gleaming corridors. You weren't lying, Claire said, shaking her head in disbelief. This changes everything. Over. The next hour, William and his crew explained their mission, to unite humanity against the Xenari and reclaim their freedom. They shared stories of their victories, showing footage of the eclipse in action. Claire listened intently, her skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. If you're serious about this, she said finally, then count us in. But you'll need more than just us. Spread the word. Show others what you've shown me. Encouraged by Claire's support, the crew moved on to other colonies, repeating the process. Each stop brought new challenges. Some settlements refused to trust them, while others lacked the means to contribute. But slowly their ranks began to grow. Ships joined their fleet, volunteers signed on to serve aboard the Eclipse, and supplies flowed in from those who couldn't fight but wanted to help. As their coalition expanded, so did their confidence. The crew of the Eclipse became symbols of hope, their story spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. People whispered about the legendary warship that had defied the Xenari, inspiring others to rise up against their oppressors. But the Xenari weren't idle. Intelligence reports indicated that the Empire was mobilizing its entire fleet, preparing for a decisive confrontation. Their leaders had declared the Eclipse a threat to their dominance, and vowed to destroy it at any cost. The final battle was inevitable. William called a meeting with his core team to discuss their strategy. We can't win this by brute force alone, he said, pacing the room. Even with our allies, the Xenari outnumber us. We need to hit them where it hurts, their command center on their homeworld. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You mean, waltz right into their backyard? Bold move, boss. It's risky, but it's our best chance, Rachel added. If we disable their leadership, the rest of the Empire will collapse. Samantha nodded, though her expression was grim. It'll take everything we've got, every weapon, every ally, every trick up our sleeve. William turned to face them, his voice steady. Then let's make sure we're ready. This isn't just about defeating the Xenari. It's about proving that humanity can stand together, that we're stronger united than divided. The days leading up to the assault were filled with frantic preparation. Ships from allied colonies gathered around the Eclipse, forming a ragtag fleet that stretched across the void. Engineers worked around the clock to arm and repair vessels, while strategists coordinated attack plans. Morale was high, fueled by the belief that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. Finally, the day arrived. The fleet emerged from hyperspace near the Zinari homeworld, facing a wall of enemy ships stretching as far as the eye could see. Lasers and missiles streaked through space as the battle began, lighting up the darkness with bursts of fire and explosions. The Eclipse led the charge, its plasma cannons cutting through the Zinari lines like a knife through paper. Inside the ship, the crew fought with everything they had. Samantha monitored the shields, rerouting power to keep them stable as wave after wave of attack slammed into the hull. Daniel navigated through the chaos, dodging torpedoes and debris with unmatched skill. Rachel coordinated with allied ships, ensuring their movements remained synchronized. And William stood at the helm, issuing orders with calm precision. Despite their efforts, the odds were overwhelming. The Zinari fleet seemed endless, and casualties mounted on both sides. Just when it seemed like they might be overwhelmed, reinforcements arrived, human ships emerging from hidden positions to flank the enemy. The tide of the battle shifted, and the Zinari defenses began to crumble. Seizing the opportunity, William ordered the Eclipse to break through the remaining forces and target the command center. The massive structure loomed ahead, bristling with weapons and protected by layers of shielding. It would take all of the Eclipse's firepower to bring it down. All hands, brace for impact. William shouted as Samantha unleashed the ship's main cannon. A beam of pure energy surged forward, striking the command center with devastating force. The structure shuddered violently, its outer layers collapsing under the strain. Moments later, it exploded in a blinding flash, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. The loss of their command center threw the Zinari into disarray. Without centralized leadership, their fleet fragmented, retreating in disorder. Cheers erupted across the Allied fleet as the victory became clear. For the first time in decades, humanity had triumphed over the Zinari Empire. As the dust settled, William addressed the crew, his voice filled with emotion. Today we proved that no empire lasts forever, not when people refuse to bow to tyranny. The Eclipse isn't just a ship. It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we stand together. Let this be the beginning of a new era for us and for everyone who believes in freedom. The crew cheered, their exhaustion replaced by pride and relief. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not just as individuals but as a united force. The Eclipse had fulfilled its purpose, becoming a beacon of hope in a fractured galaxy. In the weeks that followed, the crew worked to rebuild and heal. Colonies liberated from Zinari rule celebrated their newfound freedom, while others joined the growing alliance determined to prevent such tyranny from rising again. William, Rachel, Samantha, and Daniel remained at the forefront, guiding humanity toward a brighter future. Though the scars of war would never fully fade, the legend of the Eclipse endured, a reminder that even in the darkest times, courage and unity could light the way forward. And as the ship sailed into uncharted territory, its crew carried with them the promise of peace and the determination to protect it.